We've had some good times on this show. We've had some laughs. We've looked at some legitimately great films. But there have been bad times. We've had our Cloverfield paradoxes. We've had our 50 Shades Freed. We've had our Slendermans. Hell, the video that kicked off this channel was a review of The Bye Bye Man. An awful horror movie. At least, I thought I knew what awful was. But that was before I watched the 2018 horror film Death House. Death House has a pretty simple sounding plot about the ultimate prison that has a prison break releasing the world's worst criminals, many of which apparently being played by horror icons beloved and known to many. And the only two special agents on the premises have to find a way to shut the riot down. But let me tell you, that's not what it actually is. Granted, that is the technical plot. But what the plot doesn't tell you is how this movie is full of subplots about augmented virtual reality prisons for the criminals, or how there are these super powered ultimate killers that get an immortality power from some unknown god that we don't even hear about until like the last 10 minutes. And of course, all of the all-star lineup for this film is mostly comprised of cameos. And who is that all-star lineup? Well, let me tell you, there's Bill Moseley, who most people will probably know him as Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And he also plays Otis Driftwood from Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Reject films. You have Tony Todd, who people will know from the Candyman series, and he also plays that like morgue guy from the Final Destination films. You've got Sid Haig, who people... I mean, this man has had a career longer than the Constitution, but I feel like most people will probably recognize him as Captain Spaulding, also from Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. And then you have Kane Hodder, who definitely should be known, at least on this channel, because he got famous for playing Jason Voorhees in 3 of the Friday the 13th films, but he also is from the Hatchet series, which more underground horror fans will recognize. Now, after that incredible lineup of horror icons, some of which I didn't even name just because I can't remember all of them, the reason I chose Kane Hodder last is not just because I'm this Friday the 13th fanboy, but because the rest of them are like combined total runtime that they serve in this movie is probably like 10 to 15 minutes. That's combined. I was most excited to see Sid Haig because he's just an exciting personality to watch. He is fun, he is charismatic, even at his dirt old age. He's in one scene. One. And as soon as I saw him in the film, I looked over to my friend James and I was like, I paused the movie and I said, before I get my expectations too high, how often is Sid Haig in this film? He looked at me as if he was about to tell me that I had cancer, and he said that was it. It was like a 60-second scene, and that was all he had in this. I could have cried, because that one scene with Sid Haig was the best part of the movie. Tony Todd, who is just super cool, his voice is awesome to listen to. He's just got this deep, gravelly voice that just locks you in whenever you hear him. He's at the beginning and end of the film. He bookends it. That's it. And in total, it's probably like 2-3 minutes maybe. Bill Moseley, who is almost just as exciting to watch on screen as Sid Haig is, he has nothing to offer this movie. Nothing. He does nothing eccentric. He does nothing wild. He does nothing crazy. And just in case you're not totally familiar with Bill Moseley, you don't really recognize those characters that I previously mentioned, just remember, most people know him from being in Rob Zombie movies. Rob Zombie is freaking weird and crazy and eccentric and wild, and Bill Moseley is one of his go-to guys. So he's a weirdo. And plus, he played a guy in Texas Chainsaw 2 that had a metal plate covering half of his head, and he would scratch it with a coat hanger and eat whatever he pulled off. The guy's weird. The guy's crazy. The guy's eccentric. And what he does in this film is he stands there and gives exposition at the end of the movie. But I can't spend this whole review just talking about why I'm upset that this whole cast of icons didn't work. There's other shit I gotta talk about. Oh my god, I wish I could get every individual clip that I wanted. There's just the whole thing about they put the prisoners in augmented reality chairs, and they put them in prisons of the crime that they committed, they're forever trapped in that. I think halfway through this film, I paused it and looked at my friend and said, what the hell is happening? And he, who had seen it already, he said to me, I have no idea. This movie does not know what it wants to be. Is it a sci-fi? Is it a horror? Is it a horror sci-fi? Is it goofy, campy? Is it just an exploitation film? What is it? Is it all of the above? Because if it's trying to be all of the above, it failed. None of it makes any sense. There's this scene where they're explaining to you how they green screen and how they hired homeless extras, and they get the details of everything correctly for the prison cells, but that doesn't make any sense when the prison cells are so, detailed and accurate as to what happened whenever these criminals committed their crimes. But why do they need to do that whenever the criminals are in a virtual reality version of it? They don't need that. It's all in their mind. They're in a mental prison. Mental. And there are parts in this film that honestly did have me sitting there and just with this wide grin on my face, because I didn't know how else I could react to what I was seeing. There's a part where they go and they're hiding from the escaped convicts, and they go into this freezer area, and there's just these things in there. They're they don't have skin. They're screaming and screeching and howling. And for some reason, there's a microphone hanging from the ceiling amongst these skinless, bloody, gory creatures that are eating something that was alive, and one of them is standing at the microphone, and he's just going, "We no longer wish to be freed." And then the scene ends with them leaving that area. It affected nothing. It had nothing to do with anything. They just move on. It's like they were trying to build this crazy world, but instead of making it interesting, they just made it stupid. Like right at the very end, spoilers, I guess, like the main two lead actors find out that they were also put in the virtual reality thing and apparently brainwashed into believing something, and then it ends with them saying that they're gonna go hunt down the escaped convicts. They really tried to make us want a sequel. They tried to sequel bait this. And of course, this is all after, you know, they go and discover like these super criminals who are like locked away by themselves because they're just so evil. I think they're called like the 5 evils or something. And they're just so evil that they have to be locked away by themselves. And when we finally meet them at like the last 15 minutes of the movie, maybe, then, you know, it's got Bill Moseley and it's got all these other people, and they're standing there in this dark room with like these light up things on their chest that are so poorly like digitally added on there in post-production, and they just explain the folly of man and how there can be no good without evil, and how they are the evil and the cops are the good. And it is the most drawn out shit I've ever heard in my life, and spoken so flatly by Bill freaking Moseley. And then I haven't even talked about Kane Hodder yet. He's like the leader of all of these escaped criminals, and he at one point he gets shot and has his chest blown out. He falls, and then some dude just manages to reach down and rip out his intestines and spinal cord and everything, and then he just gets back up like nothing just happened. And then it goes totally unexplained until the very end, when he's like, "I have studied you," and he's saying this to like the 5 evils or whatever. He's like, "I have studied you, I have become one of you, I cannot die." What did he study? Why can't he die? Is it like he made a deal with Satan? They don't explain. I guess he's just so evil that he can't die. Until he does. He does die. So that was pointless. This is one of those movies that if I were to just keep going about it, this would be an hour-long video, and I'm not gonna do that. I'll just stop right here and say that Death House from 2018 is one of the worst films ever made. Do I even need to say a score? Do I really need to be like, "Oh, Death House 2018 gets an F"? No, I don't, because there's nothing redeemable or good or interesting or enjoyable about this film. So yeah, I'm gonna end it here. This movie is awful. Check out my social media. I gotta go.